Okay, we're going to get going. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Adam Greco, and I work with Search Discovery, and I help moderate the SDEC. Today's session is going to be Adobe Analytics related. For those of you who are new to the SDEC, we are a free educational group that basically provides weekly training sessions, tips and tricks related to things like digital analytics, digital marketing, and so on. If you are not an official member of the SDEC, you can join with a click, and I'll be putting some information in the chat. The benefit of joining is that you get access to our SDEC Slack group, where we have over 50 past webinars. And you also get notified ahead of time of sessions like this via your calendar, which you can accept or decline as you wish. You can also tell us which topics you're interested in, and we can make sure you get notified about sessions related to those topics. This session will be recorded and will be shared later today once it's done processing in the Adobe Analytics channel of the Slack group. If you have any technical problems during the session or any questions about the SDEC, you can ping me on the chat in the Zoom chat. But if you have questions for Lukas, please put them in the Zoom Q&A. That makes it much easier for us to get to the questions at the end of the session. So that's all the housekeeping. I'm excited to have Lukas on. Any Adobe Analytics user knows that Adobe Analytics can get quite crowded when it comes to different components and things. And I had a chance to see a sneak peek of Lukas's tool that he's built. And I'm super excited for all of you to check it out. So Lukas, thanks so much for joining, and I will hand it off to you. And remember, you're muted. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, no longer. Thanks a lot, Adam, for the intro. I'm going to talk about how to efficiently make Adobe Analytics tidy and user-friendly, and how to save a lot of time for you as an admin, and how to stay on top of things, how to work in a data-driven manner, not only for your website optimizations, but also for your Adobe Analytics optimization. So optimizing your users' experience with Adobe Analytics in a more data-driven manner. Everything I'm going to show you is based on the Adobe Analytics API 2.0. So I'm going to show this with my tool, the Google Sheets Component Manager for Adobe Analytics. But the methods are all in the API 2.0. You can use Julian Piccini's wonderful API wrapper if you're good at Python, for example, and do all this yourself. But of course, you can also use the tool I'm going to show you, but I didn't want to make this just a blunt tool sales pitch. The principles and methods I'm going to show you are generic. They're not just privy to this tool. That being said, let's get started. Some words about myself. My name is, again, Lukas Oldenburg. I've been doing digital analytics for now 14 years. I own a little consulting company called DIM28. I'm the only employee, so I've never had a problem with my boss. And I created this Adobe Analytics bulk component manager for Google Sheets. And in my free time, I watch a lot of basketball, I play piano, like languages, etc. Let's get started. And the motto today is a famous quote by John Wanamaker. John Wanamaker, maybe you remember him. He used to live in the 1920s and coined that famous term that half of my marketing money is wasted, but I don't know which half. Now, John Wanamaker, as we all know, was revived, and he now lives and works as an Adobe Analytics admin at a large corporation. And he now says, half of my Adobe Analytics is trash, but I don't know which half. So that's our motto, and let's keep that in mind for the rest of the session. Let's start with ourselves. So we are Adobe Analytics admins. We know our setup. We know any answer to any reporting question, any analysis question. We know how the segment definitions work, how the implementation was done. And if we don't remember right away, we'll figure out how to do that. So for us, mostly the Adobe Analytics setup is pretty much okay, or even great. But how much do we really know about the daily struggles of our users? And I've seen this a lot in organizations, that those people who know the implementation and the setup of the Adobe Analytics account the best, those people are often very far away from the everyday struggles of their users. And And even if they try hard to be on top of what their users are experiencing, they're still too far away. For me, that's key because for me, if you use Adobe Analytics, you're using it hopefully to be an engine for data democratization in your company, to make your whole organization more data informed, to take data informed decisions, to have as many people as possible work based on data and work with data, be able to do little or large analysis by themselves. I mean, Adobe Analytics is, in my opinion, that the biggest USP of Adobe Analytics is that it's an engine for data democratization, because anybody can do analysis with it. You can customize workspaces and panels in a way that no other tool allows you to do that. And anybody can do analysis and stuff without having to write a single line of SQL or know any pandas and Python, whatever. So um, Adobe Analytics is the tool for data democratization. And you as an admin, your job is to fuel that data democratization, to fuel user adoption, to drive user adoption. And if your users adopt the tool, then you see that your monthly logins or whatever your KPI as an admin is go up. This is, for example, a KPI that I have as an Adobe Analytics admin at one of my clients. And my goal is to make people adopt the tool, use it a lot. And every month we look at how many users are logging in, or every week. And there's some other KPIs. But for me, if you're an Adobe admin, this should be one of your main KPIs. But if you cannot do your job, if you don't do your job as an admin, that's not going to happen. And you'll soon hear the question, so why can't we use Google Analytics? Because in reality, what Adobe Analytics sometimes looks like is this. So here are typical questions of Adobe Analytics users. So here we have this lady. She just wants to know what users search for. Then she types search term into the component rail in Workspace, and she sees a list that is not even half of what she sees. I had to crop it, of course, and yeah, she's like, "Oh God, so which of these components is the right one? I have no idea." Another example, very typical: first touch channel, last touch channel, marketing channel, and what the heck is marketing channel instances? Very confusing if you're a new user, even if you're an intermediate user. Um, of course, you can help with trainings, but it's not going to fix all the issues. Or another typical issue is you have a page name, and then you have the page name again in an evar, and then users ask, hey, should I use page name or page name evar x? Which is the correct one? Or maybe even have it in another prop or whatever. Or another typical case is I was looking for the order number, because that's what the order number is called in the ERP system or the BI tool or wherever other system they work with, but I cannot find it because in Adobe Analytics we called it EVAR70 transaction ID. Why? Because it's derived from s.transaction ID, and for us as technical people, it's very helpful that this thing is called transaction ID, but for regular users, they will not understand that transaction ID has to do anything with an order. So, so naming is not in the user's language, and this can also be like language. So if your Adobe Analytics is set up in English, but your coworkers usually work in whatever German or French, then it's helpful if they get the components in their language and not all in English. Another example, single page visits or bounces, etc., ad infinitum. I could continue this list really a lot for a long time. And probably some of you feel at home when they see these questions. So the component rail, this nice little feature of Workspace, becomes a demotivator. And that's what we don't want. But yeah, of course, you can do a lot by good trainings, by support materials, by creating a landing page workspace where everybody gets to when they log into Adobe Analytics, and this workspace then contains table templates and links to example workspaces and template workspaces, etc. But ultimately, what I've experienced is that people, no matter how much documentation is there, they struggle with reading documentation, they struggle with finding the right video for their particular problem. And even with demo workspaces, you're not going to cover all their issues, and maintaining all these is not easy as well. So people won't go through you and your support process, especially if your support process is create a Jira ticket. You're too far away. Face it. They have no time to wait for the next power user session or they are even ashamed of formulating their problem to you because they may feel like, oh, you probably explained this in the past, but I forgot, or they might not be able to formulate their problem to you. So you need another way to stay on top of things. You need another way to stay on top of what your users do. You need another way to find out what's really going on in your Adobe Analytics on a day-to-day basis for your end users. And in order to be able to stay on top of things and to know what's really going on, you as an admin need to answer some of these typical questions. What are typical questions of Adobe Analytics admins that want to stay on top? First of all, they would like an overview over the thousands of workspaces, segments, metrics, etc. that they have, because in Adobe Analytics it's all isolated. You go to segments, you see only segments. You go to success events, you see only success events. You go to calculated metrics, you see only calculated metrics, etc. So why can't we have this all in one place? How can we efficiently find and delete the thousands of components nobody uses? Because that would really clean up the clutter in the component rail. How can we enforce a naming convention for components so people can expect a certain kind of consistent naming? Or which EVARs, props, success events, etc., could we remove from our launch implementation because it's so full of EVARs and success events and props and whatever. And I wish we could sort of scratch part of that, because maybe some part of that is implemented but not really used, would also make our tracking faster and be less a source of errors. And then a very typical one, you told your users 700 times that, hey, EVAR 7 and segment X doesn't work anymore. Can you please you have to use EVAR 25 and segment Y. And then you open the next workspace and you see, they still use EVAR 7. And then at some point you say, hey, why can't we just replace all those components that don't work anymore, or which are deprecated automatically by another one? Another typical problem is that people create duplicate segments and calculated metrics. So you'll have 7 segments that filter traffic from France, and then you sort of have to reconcile that because they couldn't find the old segment for that, and then they recreated it, or because the old had a bad naming, they didn't find it, etc. So these problems sort of all are related to each other. And last but not least, and for me this is, especially if you're an Adobe Analytics admin, is something that you should definitely do, is look into curated components for virtual report suites. Because with component curation in virtual report suite, you can really solve a lot of daily issues that your users have with the component rail. And if you haven't heard about that, I think you should put this on your prior list to the top as an admin. Create virtual report suites with curated components, because what's going to happen? For example, I'm here in an unfiltered report suite. It's a real client. And here you see the green dots are virtual report suites. And let's do the search term example I had earlier. Let's search for search term, and yeah, have fun finding the right component here. But if you go to the virtual report suite with enabled component curation, let's see what happens. Yeah, so the list is down to 3, and 3, and even better, those are also named differently. So let's click on the first one. You see it's renamed from on-site search term prop 15 to on-site search term volume and clicks. And the second one is also renamed. So you can not only limit the number of components that people get swamped with on the left side in the component rail, you can also rename them to reflect a language that your users will understand. And what I personally like most about virtual report suites with component curation is that you can still click on show all components. If you know you need on-site search term prop 15 exists and not star, then you can still use it. But these 3 are sort of, hey, this is curated, this is for you to use. The rest is at your own risk. So pro users can still excel with any component they might want to, but your regular users will have a sensible set of components with a sensible naming to get started. So that for me is a key concept, independent from any tool that you should look into as an admin. So now let's look at the tool. The tool again, it's called Component Manager for Google Sheets. And the idea behind the tool is to have the possibility to do data-driven bulk changes to your Adobe Analytics setup. So you can manage and clean up based on what is actually used. You can see, organize, edit, delete, and replace all components in one place in one Google Sheet. It's a great driver for data democratization. So you can verify the adoption of new components. You can enforce naming conventions. You can see which workspaces are popular and which aren't, etc. And it's also a great tool for prioritization. Just yesterday, I had a talk with a client who said, hey, we need to enhance the tracking for this barcode scanner. And this tracking of this barcode scanner is already quite complex. And then I looked into the component manager and saw that, hey, this workspace of the barcode scanner got 2 views in the last 90 days. And it doesn't even have a scheduled email for it. And the components like the barcode scanner segments are not used much. So I don't know if we really should enhance the tracking if nobody uses the data. So it's also a good tool to prioritize your own work and make your life easier and have good arguments why you want to do something or why you wouldn't want to do something. Okay. The most typical case for the component manager is the cleanup case. So that's probably what it saves most time at. Let's look at this example case. So you have a client with over 10,000 components. That's segments, calculated metrics, age ranges, dimensions, and metrics. And dimensions are evars and props, and metrics are success events and any other metrics that Adobe provides out of the box, like visits and unique visitors, etc. And they had also thousands of workspaces. And again, half of that is probably trash, but we didn't know which half. The Adobe interface offered only or offers only limited bulk editing capabilities of or whatever of components. They had previous cleanup attempts, for example, for their 6,000 or 7,000 segments. Those failed or had to be massively limited in scope. Nobody really wanted to do that because it's such a tedious type of work. You have to go into the segment manager and go by segment, whatever. So the disorder just grew. So in that case, what you should start with is your workspaces. And the first step, in my opinion, is you got to delete outdated or unused workspaces. And for this, the component manager has a tab called Workspaces. And in this Workspace tab, you'll have a list of all your workspaces. And you can filter this list by the owner, by tags, by last modified, by shared to, number of active scheduled jobs, so how many actively scheduled email PDFs or CSV exports do you have, and how many views did this project get in the last 90 days. So for example, here, this project got 113 views in the last 90 days. Then you send a copy of that filtered list to your stakeholders. You say, hey, guys or girls, please mark the workspaces you still need with X in the column, hey, I still need it. Then you can put X here. Deadline April 30th. And if anything is not marked as I still need it, then it will be deleted. And let's do this together in the component manager. This is just a demo, an agency account. So you'll see a lot of like demo workspaces that I created through the API. That's why there's such a strange email and username here. But let's look at this. We'll filter out just those that had no views in the last 90 days. And we only want those with 0 schedules. Then we would go to modified and filter by condition. Date is before whatever. And then I'm not going to do this here, but like last year. So something that wasn't modified in the last 12 months. And then I just put X's here in the delete column. And I go to Adobe Component Manager, click on Workspaces, delete Workspaces. And then it says, yes, okay, I'm going to do that. And then you'll see the status bar showing an update. It'll take about 20 to 30 seconds. And then it should give me the feedback that the deletion has completed. Let's give it another second. Yes, it's pulling in the projects. Deletion has started. Deletion complete. saves the logs, clearing the column, and updates the list. So now it's updating the list, and it will write into the sheet the new list of workspaces. Let's wait a bit. And here we're done. And the workspaces that I just deleted are gone. So imagine you've done this now and deleted 2,000 workspaces or 700 or whatever. And my recent client deleted 1,500 workspaces. And now a lot of components are going to be orphaned. What does that mean? Components like segments and metrics or whatever are not going to be used anymore because the workspaces where they were used are now gone. So for this, we switch to the component usage tab. And here, this is, in my opinion, it's basically a gold mine for admins. Here you see all your components. So all your calculated metrics, date ranges, dimensions, metrics, and segments, you can filter for them. You have the ID, the name, the owner, the description, the definition, the type. There's some more columns. I'm not showing everything here. And now to the right, you see matches. So let's start with matching projects count. What does that mean? Here, for example, we have 3 matching projects count. So 3 times does this component add clicks by ad impressions appear in a workspace. So it's used in 3 different workspaces. And if you're interested in what workspaces those are, you can go to the matching project names and you see, those are the 3 workspaces where this is used. If you don't believe me, let me go into Adobe Analytics and open this demo workspace, for example. This is it, Datacraft Data Comport, and we see add clicks by ad impressions is used here, even several times. So that's what I mean by matches in workspaces. So it tells you, hey, this is used in 3 workspaces, so probably not a deletion candidate. Next column, matching calculated metrics count, matching segments count. And let's filter for something here. See, for example, AMO click-throughs is used in 1 calculated metric. The calculated metric name is a wonderful name, test metric, that uses another calc metric and whatever. And I've opened this metric here. Unfortunately, Adobe told me to refresh, but you see here, AMO click-throughs is indeed used in this test metric. Same thing with segments. In how many segments is a component used? Yeah, I'm not gonna show this now because we're running out of time. All right, so what I can do now to clean up, the easy thing is just go to matches total and select only those with no matches. Then I include only those that I can actually delete here. So calculated metrics, date ranges, and segments. And I limit the type to non-template components. Template components are, for example, all visits or unique visitors and stuff that comes out of the box with any Adobe Analytics account. So you couldn't change it or couldn't delete it. So now we have segments, we have date ranges and calculated metrics here. And to delete it, all I need to do is take these IDs, copy them, go over to the component editor tab. Then I go here to the editor part, which is sort of the place where I put in edits and changes to my Adobe setup. I go to paste, I paste the IDs. The component manager then adds in the additional info. And now I can define the method. So I can say change, which means I want to change this component. So for example, I want to change the name, or add some description, and I do this for the next one, etc. And that way you can easily implement a naming convention because you can just put all your metrics in one sheet and just type the ideal name behind it. In this case, though, we want to delete. I'm going to go at add and remove in a bit. And we want to delete those components. So I select delete. Then I go down, also delete, paste it. That's it. Go to Adobe Component Manager, Component Editor, send updates to Adobe Analytics. Then it gives me a preview and I can check if that's really what I want to do, really send updates to Adobe Analytics. And if I click yes now, stuff gets deleted. I'm not going to do this because I still need those demo components, but you get the idea. The cool thing is also that in the update log tab, you'll see all the changes that you've done. So it stays transparent who did what when. So Lukas Oldenburg deleted 6 very important demo metrics or demo workspaces just now. That's what we did earlier. And yesterday I deleted other stuff. So yeah, it stays kind of transparent what is changed. Last but not least, let's go back to the component usage tab one more time. And let's go a little bit further to the right and remove the filter now. Here we have another column called duplicate segments count and duplicate calculate metrics count. So that's the case when I said people create the same visits from France segment 10 times, and then you have the same segment definition, but in 7 or in 10 different segments. So here, for example, we see 3 duplicate segments. Here we see the segment names. So these 3 segments are identical in their definition, but they have other names. I see the segment IDs here. And what I can do now is take one of these IDs, or all 3 of them, go to the Replacer tab. I'll paste the ID here, the 3 duplicate IDs here, and say, hey, please replace them by this ID, by this segment. So replace these 3 segments by this segment. So all workspaces, all segments, and all calculated metrics that use this this component or this segment will be replacing it by this component. So here, for example, we're replacing EVAR 128 by EVAR 130 because AEM audience should no longer be used. It's AEM group now. Or detail views is now better represented by deal ID instances. So we replace event 78 by EVAR 89, or we replace this segment by this segment, etc. You get the idea. And it goes through all workspaces, calculated metrics and segments, and replaces it automatically. To do that, I'll go to Adobe Component Manager, component usage, run component replacer, and then you'll wait a bit and it's done. Last thing in the all component usage tab is the VRS columns, or the VRS columns. These are new. I talked about component curation in virtual report suites, and here, let's filter by X. I see which components are part of virtual report suites. So I have 2 virtual report suites in this account, beginner components and advanced components. And so add costs by downloads is part of this virtual report suite and this one, while this last component segment is only a curated component in this virtual report suite. So if they select whatever, depending on the virtual report suite they select, they'll see one or both of those components. And that gives you an overview over, for example, you could see, hey, this is part of the curated components of both virtual report suites, this component here, but it's not used. Oh no, this one is actually used 3 times, but let's assume that this component is in both virtual report suite, but it's not used anywhere. So you might as well remove it from the curated components, because if nobody uses it, then it's probably not that useful to have it spam the component rail on the left side, even within the virtual report suite. Okay, final thought or final slide. Let's summarize the bulk editing options you have. So you can delete or change. We did that. So you can change the name, the description, or delete a component entirely. Or you can add or remove a component, and add and remove has to do with virtual report suites. So if I say remove, that means this component, this calculated metric, add cost per click, will get removed from this virtual report suite, but not from this one. So with your component manager, you have a column for each virtual report suite, and you can add or remove from one or more virtual report suites at once, which you cannot do in the Adobe Analytics interface. That's one major problem, that managing multiple virtual report suites is really admin hell. And you can also set the curated name. So if you want a user-friendly name for your component, you can also do this here. All right. that's as much as I wanted to show, and I'm open for questions. Or like maybe one last thing. Sorry about that. Now we delete a lot of components. Next step for me is go about the dimensions and metrics. So let's check out our evars and props and see, hey, prop 22, third-party ad placement, not used anywhere. Why don't we remove that from launch? So that's like the next step. You can not only slim down, clean up, make your data, you make your Adobe Analytics interface more data-driven, more user-oriented. You can also do that with your launch implementation. And I'm sure your launch implementation is pretty full after a couple of years of implementing Adobe Analytics. And sometimes you wish to make it leaner, but you just don't know how. And I think with a tool like that, you could probably do that. All right. So much from my side. And now I'm open for questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Lucas. So if anyone has a question for Lucas, please use the Zoom Q&A area now. So we'll let a couple of those questions come in. We've already got some. One question I just wanted to clarify. I believe you said this is the case, but if you have three segments and you've got basically three different segment names and you choose to replace them, would it basically go into every workspace and say wherever it had, so let's say you have segment A, B, and C, but they're all
Mhm.
exactly the same definition. Would you basically it would get rid of B and C and just replace them with A? So you have one segment that's used everywhere. And the same thing would apply to calculated metrics and so on.
Exactly. That's how it would work.
And that means you could also do that with derived calculated metrics as well, I assume.
Exactly. It's yeah,
Okay,
any component would work.
cool. Okay, awesome. Okay, so first question we have here is, do you need to use an API to use this tool that you've set up in Google Docs? So can you walk us through kind of like what access, obviously you've got a lot of power here. You could do some real damage if, so what kind of rights does someone have to have? And this probably isn't a tool that you want to give to everyone at your company.
Yeah, it's a tool for admins. So basically, um, we would create one of these sheets for you. You need to provide me with a JWT token, so the API 2.0 token, and that requires to set up one user in your Adobe Analytics account. Well, you don't have to, but ideally you want to have a separate user for the component manager, because if you don't trust me anymore, then you can just remove that user and the component manager cannot do anything anymore. And then the whole sheet gets populated automatically, and then you can get started. So I don't know if
Okay.
that was clear enough.
So we have a couple questions around how do people get access to the tool and how much does it cost? So do
Yeah.
you have a slide that has your contact info or a URL that we could put in the chat?
Yeah, you can go to datacroft.de, and the slides also contain that URL, so I can send this in the chat afterwards. Datacroft.de, and then select Component Manager. I don't want to make too much of a sales pitch here, but you can get a free 30-day trial until August 15th if you want to, and test it out for yourself.
Okay.
And how do we get started? You basically get access to that sheet. I'll share this sheet to you, and then you have edit rights, and you can share it with anybody you like to as well. So if you want to have more people in your organization using that, then feel free to do so. From the moment it's shared with you, you can start using this additional menu and do whatever you want with it.
Okay. Next question, can we restore any of the deleted workspace or components, calculated metrics, or segments?
That's a good question. I learned a lot because I, of course, tried and I did some bad things with it as well, accidentally. But the good thing is Adobe Analytics, even if you delete a workspace, it deletes it from the list. So for example, here we have a list of links also even to the workspace is another account. And if you know the ID of the workspace, you can still open that workspace, even though it doesn't show up anywhere anymore. And then you can do a save as, and then it gets created as a new workspace. So even if you delete it by accident, you can easily restore it because you'll have the the usage, the update log, and where you still have the IDs of all your deleted workspaces. And if you said now, hey, we still need this demo workspace Hund24, then you can sort of hack the URL and recreate it. What about components? So calculated metrics, segments, and date ranges, you can delete them without any fear in terms of workspaces. There might be issues. There are issues if you use those in data warehouse exports or report builder exports. So what I recommend is you create a workspace with all the components you use in. We just drop all the components in there for that you use in data warehouse or report builder exports, and then you're safe. And even if you delete a segment that's used in a workspace, the segment will still be in that workspace. It will be like a segment that you create on the fly by clicking create segment from selection, stuff like that. As long as you don't click on make it public, it will disappear as soon as you remove it from a panel. So the same applies for deleted segments. They're still there. No workspace breaks just because a segment was deleted or a calculated metric was deleted. But as soon as you would then remove that segment or calculated metric from that workspace, it would be really gone entirely.
Okay. Next question. Do you have to use this tool one report suite at a time, or can you affect multiple report suites at once?
The segments, calculated metrics, and date ranges are not report suite specific. I mean, there's a column here where you can filter by report suite. Okay, now we're in EURs and props, doesn't work, but so what people usually have issues with are calculated metrics, segments, and date ranges, and those have no relation to a report suite technically. You can just see in which workspace, in which report suite were they initially created. But if you want the same thing for EVARs and props and success events, you would need a separate sheet for that. But yeah, if you sign a contract, you'll get like 5 sheets. So you can do 5 sheets and all virtual report suites on top of that main report suite. So each sheet is based on one report suite and all virtual report suites on top of that. I mean, we can see this here. We have a config sheet, and here this is the base report suite ID here. And here are all the virtual report suites. You can add any number of virtual report suites here.
Okay. Next question. I think you covered this, but someone's just clarifying. I'm guessing the tool tells you which report suite the segments and calculated metrics are linked to.
Are linked.
So I think they're basically saying, like, is there a way in your tool to know, like, this calculated metric is in these 5 report suites and these calculated metrics are in these 3 report suites?
Yeah, I mean, a calculated metric or a segment, it can be used in any report suite. I can switch the report suite here and I can still use all calculated metrics and segments. So the segments and calculated metrics are not report suite specific. They have a parent report suite though, which is the report suite in which they were originally created, but that doesn't make them privy to that report suite. And in terms of links, maybe they meant where is it used. So
Yeah.
if it's used, for example, if this metric, demo metric, is used in one workspace, it means here one project, it means it's in a workspace that exists. That workspace is called Lukas Test Project, and that workspace is saved. And in that workspace, when you open it, you see that this demo metric is actually part of the workspace, like the example I showed you here. So this add clicks, add impressions is used in this Datacroft campaign data importer workspace.
Yeah, he was saying it was more understanding like the parent ID of the components. But Matthew, Lucas is in the SDEC Slack, so maybe if you want to dig a little deeper, maybe just ping him in the DM in the SDEC Slack.
Yeah, if it's a parent report suite, that's what you'll see here. You can filter by that.
Okay, next question. Does the component builder work with alerts? And is there a way to select and put all components from multiple report suites with different schemas? Also, is this paid? Is there a link to access it or demo version? Okay, so I think you covered some of that, but I think the question is alerts. Are those included? Because those are not really technically components.
Yeah, it's on the roadmap that they will have you'll have another tab with all your alerts, so you can see those alerts and maybe even delete them if you want to. Um, but that's not possible at the moment.
Okay, can the component manager be used to streamline metric and workspace creation? So can you actually create something with this or only modify and remove?
Can you create something? No, you can only change it or delete it.
Okay, and I assume there's no way to duplicate. If you say I want to duplicate a workspace, is that something that you've ever been requested for?
Has not been requested for. Would not be that hard, but not part of the features at the
Okay.
moment.
Um,
By the way, Adam, at the beginning you asked something about pricing. I didn't answer that question. I forgot that. Can I say something about that? Is
sure,
that
sure,
okay? Or
sure.
okay, so the price right now is 3,900 euros per year. So compared to what you usually spend on a cleanup project, I think that's a really fair price. For a small to medium Adobe Analytics setup, the maximum price right now is 5,900. So you'll be in that range if that's interesting to know.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Okay, next one. Is it possible to include last used date for a component while identifying the components to remove? So I think you showed that, but I think they're just double checking.
Last use date is not possible yet. I mean, you could sort of build this um, by doing something with workspaces. And if the workspace had a view in the last 90 days and the component is part of that workspace, which you get in the all component usage by looking at the project IDs, then with some Excel magic, you could probably do that. But that's actually a good suggestion. Maybe we'll put that on the roadmap as
Yeah.
well. But used, not at the moment. You'll have a modified date. So you see when was this component last modified, but that's just when you change the definition.
And then one question that I would have, I've actually always been a big fan of adding tags to
Mm-hmm.
components. Is
Yeah.
there a way that you can bulk upload tags to any of these components?
Not yet, no. That's a good one. I was thinking about that as well. You can
Yeah,
filter
I love to
workspaces by
do that
tag, but
because
that's
then
that's
yeah,
all.
because
Yeah.
once you because if you add, for example, the
Mhm.
same tag to 20 calculated metrics, it's just so much easier in Adobe Analytics to find those. So
Yeah.
that would be a feature request I would have.
Yeah, that's definitely also a very great feature request. I think that's also doable, and I wouldn't be surprised if that comes out in the next couple of months.
Okay, next question. I'm guessing you can't bulk upload dimensions, etc., within a segment. So for instance, if you have numerous segments built around URL strings, and then the architecture changes, so these URLs need to be updated. So I'm not sure if I 100% get that question from Matt, but does that make sense to you, Lucas?
I didn't understand it honestly.
Yeah, so Matt, maybe just ping Lucas in the measures in the SDC Slack or Measure Slack.
Yeah, just contact me in the SDC Slack. That's perfect. Thank you.
And then next question, is there any issue if unused workspace components are not cleared in Adobe Analytics, since we can control which components appear in which report suite?
If unused components are not cleared, can you say it again? Sorry.
Yeah, it's just if is there an issue if unused workspace components are not cleared in Adobe Analytics, since we can control which components to appear in which report suite? So I think that one you might have to take offline.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Um, and then Sandra asks, does it work with other tag management tools? Because I think you showed a little bit of stuff that works with, I'm assuming that's Launch.
Yeah, when launch was just parse prototo, you could use Telium or whatever. I mean, it doesn't really, I mean, whatever tool you use to implement EVARs, prop success events, um, is is um, is the one that does your implementation. But the component manager itself has no relation to any tag management system. It just takes stuff from Adobe
Yeah.
Analytics itself and not the tag management system. I
Okay,
just refer to
awesome.
the tag management system in terms of cleaning up your implementation.
Okay, well, we are out of time. So, Lucas, thank you so much. When I post the recording into the SDEC Slack group, if you can put a link to your product site
Hmm.
underneath it, since a lot of folks were asking for that, that would be awesome. So, thanks everyone for joining. And Lucas, thanks so much for showing us this cool tool.
All right. Thanks a lot. And then see you soon. Bye bye.
Yep. Have a good week, everyone.
You too. Bye bye.